Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of our Tech Tuesday webinar series. My name is Kevin Marheine, and I am the Digital Marketing Specialist and your host here from Coretek Services. Joining me today is Ryan Hinkleman, our Director of Hybrid Services. Before I hand it over to Ryan and let him run through the presentation he's prepared here today, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. We are recording today's webinar, so we will be making that recording available to you. We'll also be making the slide deck available so that if you have any questions or want to reference anything that Ryan covers here today, you'll be able to go back and look at it, or if you're catching this on demand, you'll have access to it as well. There is the Q&A features here in Teams Live event, so if you do have any questions, we do try to save some time at the end of the event to cover any of those, so please feel free to submit those using the Q&A features. With that being done, Ryan, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. So today we're going to take a look at the Citrix SD-WAN and some of its features and benefits that we see our customers utilizing in their hybrid scenarios. As you know, there is a large pool of resources where everything is moving to the cloud now, and our efficient means to get to and fro, as well as between all of the various sites that we may have in our environment, is of critical importance, even more so as we further distribute our networks and our data. And so with Citrix SD-WAN, we've come up with a way to create truly resilient, highly efficient networks, create a better user experience in the process, reduce the cost of doing so, and simplify that overall infrastructure through centralized control and management. And add some really value-add features around specific applications such as O365, and of course, some insights into the ICA protocol that Citrix in itself obviously has some unique insight to there as well. So kind of moving on, why Citrix? Well, no one accelerates a virtual app and desktop like Citrix because of the inherent understanding of that protocol and what it means, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about how we're a little different from the perspective of how we can react to changing network conditions very, very quickly at a packet level, and providing a very robust edge solution for virtualization, optimization, routing, security, all in one. And really the perspective of application intelligence, and we'll kind of show that here in the next slide. So really when you look at Citrix SD-WAN, this graphic really says a tremendous amount. First and foremost on that outermost shell is the application awareness. When you look at competing products, you're looking at something that is truly a basic networking tool, and Citrix SD-WAN is so much more than that. You'll see that it operates from a WAN optimization perspective, from a path control perspective, at a very deep and intricate network level. But at the end of the day, the insight that you gain into your applications and the ability to accelerate and optimize those, the ability to see those as a business leader and influence those at an application level, which is really, as we know, it's all about the applications and the underlying data, is really what sets the solution apart. So you can see that in order to get that application awareness, there's really 4 pieces of that puzzle. There's security, there's WAN optimization, there's path control, and there's routing. And all of that is controlled through unified policies and unified management. So this graphic does a really nice job of kind of highlighting what that is. And I think what we're going to do today is we're actually going to break this apart and really talk to, I think, 2 key pieces, the WAN optimization and the path control, and some of the concepts that is inherent to that, in the context of also talking to some of the application awareness pieces that you see there. So where are your apps, right? So as you as sitting as a user in this example in a branch, how do I effectively execute and get to my applications and their data effectively, efficiently, and in a robust fashion that allows me to continue my business operations through any unplanned outages. They might be in on-premise data centers, and I need to optimize the path to that location. That could be through an app that I'm publishing through Citrix Virtual Apps and desktops. It could be through network routing onto a cloud service. It could be a traditional application that I need to accelerate that's on-premise. It could be in a cloud host model that I've now migrated that application in my movement to the cloud. And maybe I'm undergoing app mod, and I need to make sure that even though I have transported that application to the cloud, that I retain resilient and highly effective access to that application by, again, seeing that application and understanding what it is and optimizing it accordingly. Or it could be a SaaS platform app. As more and more things are becoming SaaS platform, I want to be able to recognize that application data and recognize it separately from other internet-based traffic and prioritize it appropriately. And we'll talk about some of the key uniques there. But again, we have this built-in application intelligence where we're looking at the application traffic based on a catalog that's consistently preloaded and up to date of all different common applications, right? So we can recognize that traffic, either general web traffic, as you see here, or very specific Skype traffic, or even components of particular applications. For example, recognizing some applications a little differently and knowing that those components of application need to have different policies. So you can see this is what others might see that traffic as some of the competitors is just, they're going to simply see it as being O365 traffic or Facebook traffic or simply Citrix traffic. With Citrix SD-WAN, you're going to see that broken out into individual applications based on the signatures that they create and understand some of the rules around that you may wish to accelerate differently. Obviously, I think we can all understand that, for example, this meeting is being recorded on Teams, and the real-time nature of audio and video is going to require a different rule set than simply a chat might occur. So we can take those and accelerate those appropriately and efficiently, as well as seeing some of the insight into Citrix HDX and being able to judge all of the different channels within a remote session differently. And we can understand, for example, keyboard strokes may not need to be real time, but audio and video definitely do. And by having the insight into that session, you can understand that and differentiate that different traffic down those Citrix channels and accelerate accordingly. So again, just that coarse handling of understanding what it is at its base level versus really understanding in depth what that traffic is and being able to pull it out and take decisive action on it on a granular level that is going to differentiate that application and its performance. So again, we're going to go back to this, and I think what we're going to talk to today is a couple of them. We're going to talk about path control, which is a lot of what a lot of people think of when they think of SD-WAN, and we'll also talk about the WAN optimization pieces, what they are and how they differentiate here. So from a path control perspective, obviously there's a very clear example here of having a branch office and trying to get back to a data center, and I could have one of many different paths, and I want to aggregate those paths together and create one logical path. And in doing so, I am going to monitor every packet down all of those paths. And it's going to monitor that for something we call jitter, or the relative latency on the line, and then how much that fluctuates over time. So that as my SD-WANs on each side of that solution monitor those lines, it can make intelligent pathing solutions for all of these different connectivity options, and I can have some different policies around that. So I can control the bandwidth by utilizing all of those circuits, or I can add some business logic to them to potentially use primarily the MPLS and the internet, and then use an LTE or satellite link once a certain bandwidth threshold has been met, or if a line were to be down. And that would be a standby link. So you can see that there's quite a few options here. One of the very, very interesting things is because it's not session-based and because it's packet-based, we can actually duplicate packets down the path, where if we understand that traffic is of such importance and of such time sensitivity, like voice traffic or video traffic might be, we can actually duplicate those packets and send them down multiple links at the same time, and understand that whichever packet reaches first, the other one will be discarded, so that we can maintain an absolutely optimal connection for that time-sensitive application and accelerate to the best of the line's abilities, capability, and to tolerate that from a latency perspective and get the best of all worlds. Obviously, you do that selectively based on application and how available that bandwidth is for that given connection, but is a nice tool to have in the toolbox going forward. The other thing is, if we were to lose a link, we are going to detect that failure within just a few packets, and we will also be able to see any brownouts, latency, loss spikes, and be able to redirect any of the flow required to a different connection to assure that we continue the packet flow going forward. So this is automated failover without any user intervention required, without any changing in routing paths. It is all monitored by the SD-WAN from a packet to packet level, monitoring that latency consistently and taking the best path. So as we kind of showed earlier, this is the only solution where if you have a significant Citrix virtual apps and desktops present, we can understand the insights in that protocol. As you all know, likely, ICA, HDX is really the transport protocol of choice. And as you move forward, there's a lot of things going on within that protocol. There's all the different virtual channels for all of the different types of communications that may happen, whether that be your simple screen updates and mouse clicks, to audio traffic, to printing traffic, to any of the different virtual channels that have been created for special purpose and special use over time. So as we see those virtual channels, we're actually categorizing those into auto QoS based on what might be background traffic, i.e. the printing, what is just bulk traffic, so USB redirections that might be popular for special use devices such as specialty microphones, etc. Multimedia redirection, what is interactive, meaning inputs, display, etc., where you're truly going to get the impression of that session being responsive to you and want to accelerate that. And then what is real time? So what's in-band audio that I need to accelerate and identify separately and move forward. So obviously it's a proprietary implementation, and it is constantly being updated based on the constant evolution of the ICA protocol. So moving forward, we actually understand what that multi-stream auto QoS is, and it's basically a very, very granular QoS to ensure the latency sensitive traffic gets across according to those rules that we have set out. So we're actually able to deploy SD-WAN with virtual apps and desktops in the cloud as well. So as we add in a VPX at that branch, we're able to, oops, excuse me, apologize for that. We are able to really understand that traffic and start to break it out. Whereas as we have that Workspace app on that branch office and we have an on-premise data center, we can actually accelerate and do a breakout of that ICA traffic to the Citrix virtual apps and desktops sitting in Azure or some other cloud, and accelerate that traffic then off to a SaaS provider, and then take that unified communications and actually break that out as well. So directly accelerate using the Workspace app and something like Teams optimization, where we would actually break out the real-time traffic from the VDA in and of itself, and have that endpoint individually go and retrieve that traffic for your Teams call directly to the endpoint and merge it with the desktop VDA on the client screen. But then, of course, have the SD-WAN accelerate both those traffic streams appropriately to be able to get the best performance for all. So again, we are at application-driven QoSs, so we can really do a priority and policy-based approach throughout the entire central management, and understand what that is and set bandwidth minimums, whether we want to duplicate packets, etc. So you have a tremendous level of granularity to the solution that you can move forward. Let's talk a little bit about WAN optimization. So really, now that we've got those multiple links and we understand how versatile we can be with some of the routing that those provide, how can we really make best use of what we have from a bandwidth and latency perspective? So we've truly optimized that connection. So when you say, I want to reduce the amount of data on the WAN, right? So let's do some essentially deduplication of what that might be. And so we can actually compress that data. We can deduplicate that data through caching so that we can minimize the amount of traffic that it actually has to traverse over the wire for large data streams, etc. And we can actually store and cache bits of that on disk on those devices, so that in an example where multiple users may be fetching a file, those packets can essentially be replayed from local cache versus being traversed over a wire at the cost of latency, and really add responsiveness, especially to repeated calls for the same information that may occur as you traverse to a data center to retrieve different packets of information or different files that may be hot at that time. One of the other things you get is a dynamic flow control. And you can see kind of the difference in the graph here in throughput. As you work through TCP, it obviously has a lot of handshake requirements and acknowledgements that go back and forth. And as you do a slow start, you're actually trying to ramp up the amount of data you're sending in a scaling window across. And if you hit any bumps in latency, etc., you have to essentially step down the amount you're willing to send and get some further acknowledgements. And you can see it kind of ride the utilization across the link and step up and down. With the communication that's going on between the two SD-WANs in a connected scenario, they're dynamically scaling that and monitoring latency, and will adjust the scaling window accordingly so that you can perform at peak for all of that traffic, based on what the latency, the native line latency will allow, and get rid of some of the inefficiencies of TCP from a bulk send perspective at any given time. This is a tremendous improvement in real utilization. I know I can't tell you how many times I've talked to somebody and the network is slow, and then the network guys look up and they say, don't blame the network. I'm looking at my bandwidth graphs and we look fine, we're not at capacity. Some of it is the inherent inefficiency of what may be going on, and this is how we strive to address some of that and ensure that we're getting the maximum amount of data through in the minimum amount of time by being absolutely efficient as possible with the given bandwidth and latency available to us. Protocol acceleration. This is tremendous for file shares and the like. So a lot of protocols were really designed for LAN behavior, and when you start stretching them out over a WAN, some of their inherent cracks in that architecture start to show, but they're so well adopted at this point that we understand we have to do it. So some of that NFS, FTP, CIF share traffic, has a lot going on, and essentially the SD-WAN can step in and have those conversations in proxy on the local LAN and minimize the amount of traffic that's going down while satisfying the need for all the acknowledgements of that protocol in between. So we can collect those packets, we can reconstruct the payload, we can buffer that out and do the remote device mimic of the client response in order to keep that communication flowing and the amount of bandwidth at a minimum for those transfers that are wasteful and not truly oriented to receiving the file in and of itself, if that is in fact what we're trying to transmit. One of the huge benefits we have is some of the built-in features around accelerating specifically Office 365. If you think about some of the generalized use cases, the acceleration you gain through properly identifying and caching some of those transactions is tremendous. How many times have you received an email that your company has gotten with an attachment of a PDF or a file or a Word doc that everybody is pretty much going to click on to read, or a significant portion of your office? Well, as that happens the first time, that transaction has to happen into the cloud where we're going to use all of the tools that we previously mentioned to be absolutely as efficient about grabbing that attachment as possible. But then as subsequent transactions for a duplicate request are made, we're going to alleviate the latency and accelerate access by essentially caching those sets of packets on the device and allowing that transaction to take place locally without that WAN interaction, and give subsequent users a tremendously improved caching response. You can see, the sample performance gains there are not all hype. I mean, if you can think that, in Outlook, you're going to go grab a 3 meg attachment that now is instead of occurring over maybe a 10 megabit connection, is now going to happen at gig speed by a replay of packets, you're going to be in a tremendous position to gain from that and have an appreciable performance gain to your users. So you can see that as you break that out from that branch as well, we're also going to sensibly pick the appropriate front door location based on where you are to have the the most optimized latency to be able to have that conversation with M365 and determine where to grab that file from for the most resilient and most speedy access. And then here's kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier, where we're treating multiple paths for that virtualized Office 365 experience, where if you were in fact to be that Citrix Workspace user at that branch office, which is a very popular use case, we're not only going to optimize your ICA traffic back to your on-prem data center or up to the cloud data center that you may have, and treat that and all of the interactions that you have within that ICA appropriately, but we're also going to then, through Teams optimization, break that traffic out separately and contact potentially a different front door because it is the most efficient to that branch, to be able to put that team's real-time traffic down and mend that session together at the user endpoint to have an absolutely optimal experience for both teams, which is an ever-increasing importance to how business is done, as well as the entire desktop with all of the applications they have on there for their business need, and assure that you have just an absolutely superior performance for that. And you can see that going on here as well. Also noting that some of that may be even understanding that you may have an Azure presence and an SD-WAN there to accelerate those applications. And we can actually use that to hop on over as it makes sense dynamically to bridge another means into O365 as well. So given that, I mean, you can obviously see just how some of the capabilities built within Citrix SD-WAN are absolutely fascinating and critical, and are far beyond that of a network device. They're truly focused on application delivery and application insight, and pull this up from a simple networking device to not only a networking device that can operate on that level, but can provide business value and insight far and above what a simple QoS device can do. We can truly do application QoS levels and be able to deliver value to the business in the places that it's truly going to matter the most.
Great. Well, thank you for going over the presentation here today, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Lots of great material. Just a couple of quick questions for you here. The first one is really around, in a sort of general use case, when you're taking a look at what is sort of the relative cost associated with getting started with SD-WAN from a time and resources standpoint? What all is involved to get started?
It's actually fairly minimal. You can actually deploy virtual devices as well, which would minimize any of the costs associated with hardware in some cases. Obviously, you can deploy in the cloud with a virtual device as well. So given that you have some virtual capacity in the locations for which you wish, the point of entry is fairly low in that regard. Obviously, you want an SD-WAN presence at any of the branch locations you may have, and or other points of presence, data centers, clouds, etc. But it's something that can be built upon, and really it only takes two to tango to be able to bridge that out and in between a couple sites of importance, and then expand upon that as you move forward.
Great. And then the second question, so the first one was about just getting started. The second one here seems to be about maintaining it. So what is sort of as over the life cycle, what is really involved in that, the maintenance there for making sure that it's continuing to run and operate optimally?
So there's a centralized configuration and a centralized policy. So one of the nice things is Citrix will update and continuously validate their application definitions. So great example is as we all understand, Microsoft has a very dynamic service that they offer in M365. So as you move forward with that, a lot of the underlying ports, application, API, calls, etc., will change over time, and the definitions will update in the platform to allow you to continuously keep your thumb on what those definitions are and continue to accelerate those platforms, move them forward, and be able to then report out on those businesses to be able to understand those applications, understand their performance going forward, and really put your mind into what the business requires of you for best performance and resiliency, versus running at a network mindset level of, is this packet getting through it, and at what QoS level? We're really talking about application level QoS as it relates to business performance.
Gotcha. And I'll add in here a little bit to that question just for a little more clarity. So Ryan, in your opinion, is that something where it's easy to have the resources internally to manage everything, or is that something better where having a partner like Coretek, this is where we can really show value in helping make sure that that's all going the way it should be?
Absolutely. So Coretek absolutely offers managed services around that, and we can run those to excellence. One of the things that it allows us to do when we operate at scale is be able to keep our heads into what the latest evolution of the product is, what the latest definitions are, how others are having success in driving business value, and in turn bringing that value to you. And then, of course, doing the required maintenance on the products moving forward throughout the life cycle.
Great. Well, that will do it for today's episode. As you can see here on the screen, we do have our entire Tech Tuesday webinar library available for you in a playlist on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't gone ahead and visited us there, please do subscribe to our channel, and you can always ring the bell there to make sure that you get a notification when all of the newest videos or recordings go live. Of course, this particular recording will be uploaded as well, and we'll be sending it out to everyone who registered. But YouTube is also a great place where you can go to catch up with the latest content from our Tech Tuesday series. Ryan, want to thank you again for taking the time for talking with us here today, and for everybody who joined in person, thank you. And for those of you who are watching us on demand, thank you as well. We really do appreciate it. We are off next week from a Tech Tuesday webinar, but we will be back again the following week, coming back with a Citrix WVD focused webinar as well. So that is in 2 weeks. That's March 30th is the date of that one. So until then, we'll be signing off here, and we hope you have a fantastic afternoon. Thank you, everyone. And we are clear.